All right, we've got Joe from Oak and Eden here with us tonight, and he's brought 4 different expressions, and we're going to talk about stuff. And basically, he's going to talk about his brand. And so we want to know why you're pushing staves into whiskey. So let's know about that, and tell us about what made you start into this business, and we'll go turn over to you.
Well, thank you for having me. Glad to be here. Oak and Eden, I like to call it in-bottle finished inspired whiskey, and the way I communicate those are independent of one another, starting with in-bottle finishing. That's a process that we pioneered where we distill and age our whiskey traditionally. Comes off distilled white just like everybody else, goes into a barrel where it rests for 2 years. At which point, when we bottle, we place one of these, a 5-inch long spiral cut piece of wood. And depending upon the flavors we're trying to impart, we use different types of wood. And this is placed in the bottle to finish it. So again, distilled traditionally, aged traditionally. Everything that we're going to try tonight is a 2-year-old rye or a 2-year-old bourbon. And then we will try it with different wood types. We've got American oak, we've got some French oak, and then we've got some Amberana South American oak.
And nothing stays in over 2 years?
So far, all of the expressions are 2-year. Next year we'll be releasing a 4-year. We'll be doing a wheated whiskey as well as a single malt.
Nice.
So we will be experimenting with different whiskey types, different wood types, and different toasts. So inspired whiskey really has 2 meanings. The first and obvious one is there's a spire in the bottle. That's more tongue-in-cheek. The actual meaning and the genesis of the name Oak and Eden is the creation story, which is found in the Bible. Where in Genesis 1, God speaks everything into creation. Let there be light, and there is light. But in Genesis 2, he used his hands. He reached into his creation, taking the elements of the ground, and he formed mankind. And he brought mankind to life by putting a part of himself, his breath, into him, thereby, according to the Hebrew translation, inspiring. So, following that great example, we figuratively use our hands, taking corn on barley, we make a spirit, whiskey, and we breathe life into it with wood. So oak is emblematic of the wood that we use to flavor the whiskey, finish the whiskey, and Eden is the garden and representation of the perfection of creation. So as we experience the brand and how this spire placed in the bottle actually finishes it, changes it. And the way in which we're going to experience that is by tasting the whiskey right out of the barrel that has never been exposed to a spire in the bottle. Then we'll try it with a spire. In the case of the bourbon, we have a lightly toasted American oak spire. So American oak, which is the same species barrels are made from, but inside a barrel, particularly an American whiskey barrel, it's charred.
That's uncharred or charred?
This is lightly toasted.
Lightly toasted,
Now the one you have in your hand is actually heavy toasted.
Heavy toasted,
As opposed to a char. The lighter the toast, the sweeter the finish the wood imparts. The darker the toast, the smoother the finish the wood imparts.
Interesting.
Bourbon is a sweet spirit. It's made from corn. Our mash bill is 60 corn, 36 rye, 4% malty barley. To which we add a lightly toasted American oak spire because I want to impart sweeter notes. I want to elevate the vanilla and the caramel and give it like a coconut and a sweet finish, which hopefully you'll be able to appreciate. And then the fuller extent of this is our Cabernet Steeped, which is the third expression that we'll try. Very same bourbon, coming out of the very same barrel. The wood choice is different. It's French oak, and that French oak rested in Cabernet Sauvignon.
So how long did it rest in
It rested there for 8 weeks.
8 weeks,
And then it was introduced to the bourbon. We'll be able to notice a color difference, a smell difference, hopefully a taste difference. So Matt, if you wouldn't mind, let's start with the bourbon out of the barrel. So this is again a 2-year-old MGP sourced, so there's no misunderstanding. We do not distill. We have no intention of distilling. The brand is built on sourcing, or as we like to call it, curating. Acquiring good spirits from reliable sources, blending them, and then finishing them in bottle. So this is the base that we start with, a 2-year-old MGP bourbon.
Definitely had that flavor of bourbon before, just by itself. Yeah, that's definitely MGP bourbon. It's the classic standard recipe.
The most notable one is Bullet.
Yes.
Although Bullet is now distilling their own, they for years were acquired through MGP. In fact, Bullet's rye is still an MGP rye.
Okay.
You notice the back of the label, it says distilled in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Fantastic product, but yes,
absolutely.
A lot of people have come to know and appreciate MGPs.
Absolutely, make a lot of good stuff.
Okay. Now we're going to try the very same.
All right.
With a spire that's rested in the bottle. It rests in the bottle for 6 weeks, after which point it has done all of its magic. If you look at them side by side, you can see a color difference. You should be able to get a significant nose difference.
Oh yeah, that's a huge difference.
Yeah. You can see
wow, I didn't know it was going to be that big. Holy crap.
Smokiness.
Wow. Wow, that's
And so you said
significantly
6
better.
weeks it sits in the bottle, and after that 6 weeks, does it just stop producing?
Yes, so it does not behave like a barrel. A barrel, as we all know, has whiskey inside of it, and the whiskey is impacted because of the wood and the way in which the wood reacts to the environment. Temperature changes, barometric pressure. This, by contrast, is a piece of wood sitting in a 90-proof whiskey that is not experiencing barometric changes. It's not introduce oxygen. It does not change. It exhausts itself and imparts flavor to the whiskey. Takes about 6 weeks to do that, at which point it's done. Now, as the whiskey sits on the shelf, which is the question I inevitably get, what's going to happen? Is it going to change? The answer is no and yes. No, it's not going to change in flavor. Yes, it will actually get a little bit more mellow and smooth with time. And we actually we will try a batch 27, which was made about 8 weeks ago, and we'll try a batch 1, which was made over a year ago.
Okay. How does it affect the difference in color per bottle that you produce, per barrel that you produce?
Right. I don't want to say it doesn't. You might see from batch to batch a slight color variation, which is not just a byproduct of the spire in the bottle, but also the byproduct of the wood of the barrel. So when we bottle, we'll blend about 50 barrels together and then bottle from that. As opposed, we don't do single barrels.
Okay.
We are again buying 2-year-old whiskey from MGP, very reliable, very consistent source.
So what do you think will happen when a stage is in there for 10 years in an unopened bottle? Do you think that'll make a difference, or just have to see in 10 years?
Well, I'd be lying to tell you that I've got a 10-year-old bottle. I don't. I've got a 3-year-old bottle, and we do test against it as our gold standard, and it does not change.
It does not change. Interesting. So when people finish their bottles, people generally collect the staves just to different coloring or anything on them when they're finished when they come out, or not?
So when they go into the bottle, they're virgin wood.
Okay.
They're toasted wood, right? But when they come out of the bottle, they're bourbon infused wood. So there's a lot of cool things you can do with it. I put it in my simple syrup. I've even tried it in my gin. And it gives the gin somewhat of a bourbon flavor. It doesn't put off a lot of color at that point because, again, it's exhausted. It's doing almost everything to the original bottle which it rested in.
Okay. Very interesting.
You can definitely get the charred, smoky change.
Yeah, that's a huge difference. I can see the difference in that.
Let's keep this one, and now we're going to move to the Cabernet Steep. So the variation here, very same bourbon. The wood choice is different. Remember, we had a lightly toasted American oak spire. This is a medium toasted French oak spire. Obvious visual perception is
that's a huge
quite
difference.
Obvious. And that French oak spire rested in Cabernet.
It smells beautiful. Wow, it smells really good. That's awesome.
Isn't that something?
That is amazing.
The difference between the two.
Wow.
Yeah. This does not have all that smoky charred at all.
It's deep and it's sweet and just that nice, just this really, just even the legs on it are so much thicker. That's
the oil in it is pronounced.
That's amazing. That's really good.
So as the brand expands and we experiment with different sources of whiskey, because really the inspired whiskey is a combination of spirit, wood, fire, and then what we call spice or infusion.
Okay.
The spirit is whiskey. Today we've got bourbon and rye. As I said, next year we'll be introducing a wheated bourbon and a single malt, and we'll continue to innovate with different whiskey types, to which we'll innovate with different wood types.
Okay.
We just tried American oak. We tried some French oak.
Okay.
Later tonight, when we jump into the rye, we'll even try some Amberana oak. We're experimenting with ash. It is a South American oak.
Okay. Is it all prevalent all over South America or certain countries?
We get it from Brazil. I can't speak to if it's, you know, where it is.
Very cool.
But the flavor, botanical, ester infusion that the wood provides is really quite remarkable, even though they're generally the same species. The origin from which that species comes and the soil in which it was grown changes it substantially.
So the terroir is a pretty huge difference in
Absolutely,
it.
yes.
Interesting.
That's been our experience, yes, sir.
All right.
And then, of course, we will rest all of those spires in different spirits.
Okay.
The newest one, which is actually not going to be in market until March 1,
Awesome.
is our rum-infused rye.
Okay.
So we're taking an American oak spire. In our regular rye, we've got a char spire. This is a lightly toasted spire. We rested it in rum.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm interested to
very
try
excited.
that one.
So that is what we call inspired whiskey, or
That's
in bottle
awesome.
finished.
That's excellent. All right.
Good.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for coming, and we look forward to having a fun event this evening here with Joe. We'll have a bunch of people here later this evening and check it all out. All right.
Cheers.
Thank you very much.